This is the Redmi Turbo 4, 2025's first phone launch, and it also happens to be the one going global as POCO's X7 Pro, maybe with a few tweaks. Now there's a lot of reasons to be interested in this one. It's got a solid build with a glass back, there are fancy LEDs around the cameras, we get a high-resolution flat display that's covered by Corning's Gorilla Glass, Redmi is even throwing in an IP6869 rating. And then there is your high-capacity silicon carbon battery with a fast charger in the box. And underneath the hood, we've got Mediatek's Dimensity 8400 Ultra. And Redmi is bringing all this at a very attractive price point. So in today's video, let's take a detailed look at the new Turbo 4. And if this is your first time here, or in case you just can't remember, my name's Ash, you're watching C4eTech. And if you do end up finding this video interesting, guys, it takes a whole lot of work to get videos out this soon, so please drop this video a like, and if you enjoy watching content early, subscribe. I know a lot of you guys like flat boxy builds. I don't, but I know a lot of you do, and you are gonna love this one. It's got a flat back, a flat display, and sides that are flat. See, you can make it stand without support. Now the back here is frosted matte glass, and though it looks like two different textures, it's not. It feels the same. It's smooth, slippery, but quite resistant to fingerprints. Now the sides are plastic, but at least aren't of the glossy variety. The edges here are rounded off, so it's as ergonomic as a boxy build can be. Now the cameras here have an LED ring surrounding them. You don't really notice it till they light up. And they light up when you, say, plug the phone into charge or when you get a call. Additionally, you can use them as a notification indicator or just have them rhythmically sync with an app of your choice. Like, the display needs to be off and the phone on its face for these LEDs to light up. Pretty cool, right? Apart from this blue, Redmi also offers this phone in a black and a white. The white, to me, that looks to be the best hue this time. The central red accent line, it stands out. Now on the blue and the black, that line is still present but the same color, so it kind of melds in. Now regardless of the hue, the thickness and weight have gone up this time, but you gotta remember the back is now glass and the battery capacity has been increased by more than 30%. The Turbo 4 sports a 6550 mAh silicon carbon battery, and with the included 90-watt charger, you can get to 50% in just 17 minutes and a full charge in about 45. Talking about charging, let me walk you through the box contents. And for a change, let's go in reverse. This is the charger, and then there's a USB Type-A to Type-C cable with orange accents. Then the Redmi Turbo 4 itself, there's a solid colored silicon case, a leaflet, the SIM ejector tool, and guys, this is the 12256Q, which is the base. Redmi offers 12 and 16 gigs of LPDDR5X RAM and 256 and 512 gigs of UFS 4 storage as choices. And the box, it's got the new Redmi branding and the Oppo style silver on top, similar to what we saw with the K80 series. Now one of this phone's highlights is the fact that it is the first phone to launch with the new 4nm Dimensity 8400 Ultra. And that begs the question, what is the Dimensity 8400 Ultra? Let me explain. Now this SoC, it is a little different than your typical mid-range SoCs, and that's because it uses 8 of the same cores. They just split into 3 different clusters with different clock speeds, which decides what it's being used for. Now this setup, it comes with its own pros and cons. Since we've got 8 of the same Cortex-A725 cores, there is no specific supercore per se. And that means single core performance falls behind even something like, say, the Snapdragon 7 Plus Gen 3. But at the same time, we do have 8 Cortex-A725 cores. So multi-core performance is right up there with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, the flagship. So like I said, there are pros and cons to this approach. With the GPU, we've got Mali G720 MC7 clocked at up to 1300 MHz. Now to give you perspective, it kind of gives you performance similar to the Adreno 740, which is found on the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. So the Dimensity 8400 Ultra, as you can see, it's a very powerful SoC. And what I found really surprising was that Redmi's managed to keep it quite cool. Even after a 20-minute stress test, the Turbo 4 only hit low 40 degrees. And even more surprising was the fact that the stability scores were very good. This phone lost only 20% of its peak performance after being continuously pushed for 20 minutes, which is pretty unexpected for a Redmi. So most games should run fine here, and the experience, given the lack of heating issues, the clean back and the excellent display, it was very good. And Redmi also provides frame gen and super resolution options to further enhance that. Now talking about the display, this here is a 6.67-inch OLED panel with a 1.5K resolution and 120Hz refresh rate. Redmi's used Corning's Gorilla Glass 7i for protection, and this panel, it can hit 3200 nits for HDR. Beat it up, there is support for both HDR10 and Dolby Vision. In my testing, it output a very conservative 550 nits under manual mode, but that went up to almost 950 nits after enabling sunlight brightness, which honestly, I think that's the highest I've ever seen on a Redmi. If you've seen higher on any other Redmi phone, let me know in the comments. Now again, under auto mode, it was quite conservative, outputs about 1100 nits. If you are sensitive to OLED flicker, there's 1920Hz high frequency PWM dimming once the brightness drops under 80 nits. So overall, the display here is very good, and when you take into account the stereo speakers on offer, the media consumption experience, I would term it excellent. Now it's also worth noting that this display can be used with wet hands, which is a nice touch since this phone has an IP68, IP69 rating. That said, the fingerprint scanner is optical, and I really wish it were placed a little higher because this placement, I feel it's a little inconvenient. Now the Turbo 4 runs on HyperOS 2 built atop Android 15, and given the strong specs underneath, it's no surprise that everything was fast and fluid. HyperOS 2 also brings with it smoother animations, which improves that user experience, and the user experience, that's a very big strength for this phone. You know what's not a strength for this phone? The optics. Given this phone starts at 1999 RMB converted prices on screen, and it has everything we've seen so far, a glass pack, IP6869, a high capacity silicon carbon battery, solid internals, it's well cooled, it doesn't really throttle, so something's gotta give, right? And that something sadly seems to be the optics. Now the secondary, let's start with that. It's an 8 megapixel fixed focus ultra wide, it's average at best, colors aren't exactly matched to the primary or anything, and that primary, it's a 50 megapixel half-inch sensor from Sony, the Light 600. Now to be fair, it's been paired with a pretty fast lens f1.5 with OIS, so it's not bad. In fact, under good light, the performance, I'd call it above average. The shots were well detailed. The colors were slightly cool, but still acceptable. The dynamic range was above average. It wasn't bad at all. Under low light though, there were some software issues. See the shot? See how well the highlights have been controlled? Now this is the same shot I took a few seconds before or after, I forget. Notice how the highlights are blown out? This inconsistent processing was very common. Now there is a workaround, you can turn on the night mode and spend a couple of extra seconds to get a picture, and that handles highlights well every single time. And with that, the low light performance itself, given that wide f1.5 aperture, it was more or less good. That said, I do feel the camera software, it does need a little bit of work, which is even more obvious when it comes to video. As with most Xiaomi phone footage, regardless of if it's from a mid-range or a flagship, it's filled with EIS jitter. At least this footage is 4K 60. Selfie video is worse, full of EIS jitter and capped to 1080-30. Now this 20 megapixel selfie camera does do well for stills, skin tones were on point, images were detailed, acceptable dynamic range again, and even edge detection was more or less accurate for the most part. So that's the Redmi Turbo 4 for you, the phone that's set to go global as the POCO X7 Pro. Outside of optics, mainly video, it's mostly a great experience for the asking price they're demanding here in China. And rumored Indian prices are also supposed to be very aggressive. Personally, I was surprised with the performance on offer here and how well Redmi's managed to cool this SoC without throttling. So what do you think about the Turbo 4, and more importantly, how much would you be willing to pay for this as the POCO X7 Pro? What do you think would be a fair price? Let me know in the comments below. And I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. Ash out.